Hey there, welcome to 5149. This week, we're going to be diving into the admissions process of top business schools. Now, just full disclosure, this isn't really a traditional how to get into a top MBA program or how to write your essay, that kind of thing. So to be 100% transparent, it's more of like my critique or a cynical critique that I have of the admissions process itself and how this is actually leading to an erosion of the institution that is the MBA. But if you're one of those people who have decided that getting an MBA is the right path for you and that's something that you want to do for your future, I have no qualms, no problems with that at all. And I promise if you watch till the end of this video, you'll get some value out of this. If not, you can thumbs down this video or shoot me a mean comment, whatever you want to do. Fair game. First, for those of you who don't know me, my name is James Lee. I'm an MBA grad. I also have a degree in political science. So every week I talk about topics related to business and politics. And what I really try to do here on this channel is to dive deep into why things are the way they are and to try to provide an outlet for independent voices. So if you're here today and you like what I'm all about, then please click that subscribe button so we can go on this journey together to build a stronger independent media. All right, back to the MBA. So if you do your research about MBA programs, you'll most likely hear things along the lines of, changing the world, innovation, leadership, entrepreneurship, all that good stuff. So based on that, you would expect a lot of innovation to be coming out of business school. But if you look deeper, that's really not the case. I'll go ahead and rag on my own school just because I can. But if you go to the NYU Stern MBA website, they have a lot of strong language about, daring to change, courage, leadership, dreaming for change, entrepreneurship, just very grandiose ideas. It's almost like you're entering into this exclusive incubator type environment where business is a conduit, with which we can change the world. But when you look at the employment stats, about 70% of the graduating class actually enters into traditional business industry jobs like consulting, like financial services. And I think things are this way because business schools as an institution isn't really driven by innovation. The way I look at it, it's actually driven more by the ranking system and the prestige that comes with being a top-ranked business school. Just the way the system is set up, better schools have more access to better employers. Better employers think that students at these top schools are more skills, and this becomes like a never-ending feedback loop. So today what I want to do is dive into this ranking methodology so we can truly understand what drives business schools to behave the way they do. There's a number of different ranking systems out there. The one I'm going to reference today is the methodology used by the US News and World Report, which is, I think, more or less the gold standard when it comes to MBA rankings. If you look at it, there's three primary inputs or three primary categories in how schools are ranked. The first is the quality assessment, which is given a weight of 40%. The second is student selectivity, which is 25%. And then the final is this placement success category, which is 35%. So within the quality assessment, there's two subcategories. One is a peer assessment score and another is a recruiter assessment score. I'm not going to focus on these categories too much because this portion is kind of out of the control of the candidate. And I'll tell you why it doesn't really matter that much, because this is essentially top deans and people of these schools or recruiters ranking each other. And there's definitely some sketchiness from what I've seen going on as far as how these rankings work. According to a Poets and Quants article, which is Poets and Quants is a popular site about all things related to the MBA, essentially. So in this article, it states that every school has a vested interest in rating peer schools as low as they can get away with. It also states that many corporate employees involved in recruiting MBA graduates are MBA graduates themselves. The value of their own degree will increase or decrease depending on their alma mater's performance in the US News rankings. There is therefore a strong incentive for alumni to rate their own school highly in comparison to its peer schools. So what I see here is that the people from certain schools will rank others lower, just like, as low as they can get away with. And then recruiters, because they're from these schools, will rank their own alma maters higher, and everybody does the same thing. So this section here, this 40% to me is kind of a wash. The next piece is this student selectivity category. And so this is where it's broken down into GMAT and GRE scores, as well as the candidate's undergraduate GPA. So this section essentially for the candidate themselves means that you got to get the test scores really matter as far as the ranking. So if a school is admitting students with higher test scores, they get better rankings. So the story here is get good test scores. But the third piece here, the placement success category, which is weighted 35%, this is the part where it gets really interesting. So if you're watching this to get the golden nugget that I promised earlier about the MBA application, this is it. Because to me, if you look at it, the only thing that you can control or that the applicant control in the application process itself as it relates to these rankings, which is how I think schools are motivated, is your test scores and the ability to be employable after you graduate. Test scores, of course, no brainer. Try to get as high as test score as possible. But this is where I think a lot of the advice is maybe misguided, because I've done a lot of research for my own when I was applying myself, and I read a lot out there on how to craft a good application. And I read advice about being authentic, demonstrating leadership, making an impact on society, these kind of things. I think it's all kind of hogwash, because to put it cynically, the most important piece or the most important part that the admissions committee is going to care about beyond those stats like test scores is whether or not they think you can get a job, or whether or not they think they can get you a job after graduating. That's it. Of course, yes, they want you to be a nice person, they want you to be authentic and everything. But if you're a person coming in with no business background and you say you want some grandiose job like investment banking, that's probably not going to happen just because the competition is so high. So I would say that would probably hurt your application. But if you frame the story in a different way, you want to use the real world experience that you have and combine it with the formal training that you can get at a business school to transition to an industry role, something like that, that sounds a lot more achievable. It's going to be exceptions to all of this stuff that I'm saying right now, because at Stern every year we hear in our class there's like a Bollywood actress or some race car drivers. Those stories are super, super interesting, and companies no matter what are going to be interested because they are abnormal. They're very interesting people. But unfortunately, that's not a lot of us. A lot of us are just, people that are just trying to better ourselves and trying to get a better job. This innovation, this changing the world, this incubator thing I talked about is just, to me, a myth, because the MBA program themselves, they function a lot more like sausage factories. They're going to churn out year after year these cookie cutter, future middle management. And I'm one of those people kind of in that category, but future middle management, upper management executives. And they train these students, us, to behave very uniformly and think in the same way. So in the end, there's going to be very rare instances of innovation coming out of business school. I don't think it's a coincidence that some of the most innovative minds of this generation, as well as previous generations, they don't have an MBA. It's just not the type of environment that fosters that type of thinking. It's just not the case. So why does this matter to me? Why am I talking about this? And why does this matter to the MBA? Well, I think in the past, employers relied on business schools as a proxy for a candidate's skill and ability because the information was fairly opaque. It was hard to tell who's good, who's bad, and so a degree from a top business school helps employers weed out these candidates. But today, this information is much more transparent. It's much easier to determine a prospective candidate's ability level beyond just that piece of paper that is the degree. And there's already many signs. I think this is a troubling thing for business schools, is that there's already many signs that this pipeline, this factory, is crumbling a little bit. It's fundamentally not adding any value. So it's going on the downhill because employees are starting to care less and less about the MBA. And you could tell that that's probably the most telltale sign about this, is that many universities are shutting down their business programs due to financial difficulties. If you look just in the past 3 years, major universities such as Wake Forest University, Virginia Tech, University of Illinois, Purdue, University of Missouri, on, they have shuttered their full-time MBA programs due to financial difficulties. But the final point I want to make is, where do we go from here? Because to me, business schools, if they want to position themselves for the future, they can either change in a bold way, which means abandon this whole screwed up ranking system and rethink their entire curriculum, or the more likely scenario, which I think will probably be the one that happens, is that, much like our establishment politics today in the United States, they're going to try to tinker around the edges, think things are going fine, do the margins, tinker around the margins until they finally are disrupted and put out of business. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know in the comments below what you think. If you're an MBA candidate or you've got an MBA, do you agree or disagree with some of my assessments here of business schools and the future of the MBA? Let me know. I'm very curious to hear. And as always, please subscribe and like. I'll be back next week with more. My name is James Lee, and I thank you for your time.